A dead man tells no tale. That's likely what our murderer was thinking when tying a cannon to this franchise's bootstraps to sink it to the bottom of the ocean.
You strapped a cannon to bootstraps.
No one would ever know. Their secret lost to Davy Jones' locker. For 9 years, this has been a franchise adrift, like the ghost ships of old, an empty vessel floating by the tides without captain or crew. How did we get here? It was a franchise many people thought wouldn't even survive, past infancy, and instead grew to become a global phenomenon and one of the most profitable franchises of all time. How did it end with the director walking away? One of the most bloated budgeted movies ever made, tanking critical reception, a lead actor canceled and stuck in a lengthy court case, and multiple failed restarts. Today, we have 6 suspects, each more dastardly than the next.
Guilty?
Guilty verdict means he'll hang. Guilty?
That's not fair!
All of them likely share some blame in some form, but we're looking for the one that carries the bulk of the blame. We're gonna find that person who really deserves the hangman's noose. A sudden drop and a short stop. Let's take a look back at who killed Pirates of the Caribbean. Suspect number 1, Gore Verbinski.
Oh, you're using your made-up names. I'm Spider-Man then.
Gregory Justin Verbinski. That's right, Gore is just his pirate's name. He was known for his modest comedy, Mouse Hunt, then gained more prominence for directing the American remake of The Ring, before then being catapulted into the rank of A-list blockbuster directors by the Pirates franchise. He was the man who started it all, and maybe ended it all. Everyone is well aware at this point that the Pirates franchise first started as a Disney park ride, all the way back in 1967. It's one of their most famous historical attractions, pretty much everyone knows about it. And it remains one of the most popular today, with it still utilizing a lot of its original set pieces and animatronics. Pirates of the Caribbean was a piece of pop culture before ever becoming a movie, and a mainstay amongst Disneyland's ever-changing attractions. So when the House of Mouse started to run dry on original ideas, what did they turn to? I guess an old park attraction that could be mined as an intellectual property. And sure, why not? I mean, you can make a movie on anything these days.
Chicken jockey!
The original Pirates of the Caribbean felt doomed from the start. They were movies based on a theme park ride in a genre that was a proven shipwreck for flops. These included one of the biggest flops of all time with Cutthroat Island, and then much later on, the animated Treasure Planet. There was no better way to sink money to the bottom of the ocean than a Pirates film. Not a good investment in the 1990s and early 2000s. Yet by some miracle, it all worked. A lot of people tied the success of the series to the creation of the character of Jack Sparrow. But I think as we continue, we're gonna find that Jack Sparrow may be more of an ingredient than the whole recipe. The real glue holding things together was the confident vision of Gore Verbinski, who was hired by Jerry Bruckheimer based on his pitch of making the first film a mix of Captain Blood for its swashbuckling adventure and Treasure Island for its rich characters driven by selfish motivations as they all race for, well, treasure, of course. Throw in some fantasy elements and you've got a good mix of fresh ideas with the familiar. Curse of the Black Pearl became a sensational smash hit, grossing $650 million on a $140 million budget. It was a big gamble, but it paid off. The blend of comedy, action, romance, and adventure pulled in an audience and finally shook off the curse of the pirate genre. So when does this all go wrong, okay? This is all good stuff.
When is he going to die?
Soon, compadre. Soon.
The success of the first film was enough to greenlight 2 sequels that were shot back-to-back in the style of Lord of the Rings, Dead Man's Chest and At World's End. 2 films that, at the time, were seen as disappointingly inferior to the original, but since then they have been given a more positive modern evaluation. And frankly, good. Because I've always enjoyed both these sequels, from the sharp mythology to expanded character relationships to some of the best CGI ever brought to screen. It used to be that I used Gollum as an example on how well old school CGI holds up, but I think Davy Jones is even better. This is mostly thanks to the performance keeping Bill Nye's real expressive eyes underneath all the CGI. They basically just CGI'd around his eye holes. The film themselves may not be high cinema, but they're perfect popcorn blockbusters, with great set pieces like the Kraken fight, the journey to the underworld, and a cannon fight that's just around a whirlpool. Modern Hollywood wishes they could match this sort of fun and creativity. I'll agree that they are a significant step below the original, And I could see the argument that they are still part of the franchise's just diminishing returns, especially in the long run. I personally wouldn't be making that argument, okay? I can give lip service to it, but that's not really my own personal feelings. For me, I think this first trilogy remains locked into a creative consistency that is almost entirely due to Verbinski's direction. He had this general faith that audiences would buy into some of the more wild ideas, the vibrant, varied action set pieces, and the over-the-top performances. He was able to mesh period piece drama, costumes, and dialogue together. And he combined it all with a well-defined mythology. This was his world of the high seas, until the worst happened. One fateful night, old Gore stood up, told us he was going out for cigarettes, and never came back. If he had, he may have come back to find the entire house on fire. Why did he leave in the first place? Well, because he considered the story to be over. He told everything he wanted to tell. The original Pirates trilogy tells a very solid self-contained story. A beginning, a middle, and an end. By the time the credits roll at World's End, the story, it's complete. Verbinski claimed that the only reason he would ever have to return to the franchise would be purely financial. And maybe, if you think about it, the franchise should have concluded with Elizabeth and Will's arc. As much as Jack Sparrow became the breakout big character, these two were actually the protagonists who experienced character development and change. They're also the ones the audience are actually rooting for. Jack Sparrow was more of a middleman, an agent of chaos that the audience often can't relate to as a POV character. His motivations are often mysterious, selfish, or murky, until, he's ultimately dragged kicking and screaming into doing the right thing. It's harder to root for that. Verbinski himself would say, you don't want a Jack Sparrow movie. It's like having a garlic milkshake. He's the spice, and you need straight men. The studio clocked that right off the bat. And spoiler, the studio did not clock that right off the bat. All right, that's kind of how we got to where we are. With Elizabeth and Will's story wrapped up, Gore Verbinski's role was done, especially as producer Jerry Bruckheimer signaled he was interested in the sequels focusing more and more on Jack Sparrow and really centering the franchise around him. Verbinski remained adamant that the pirate films were about more than just Jack, and he had no desire to do a film where he was the main character. He would step away from On Stranger Tides and abandon the franchise to its fate. A creator walking away from his own creation. It would be like Spielberg walking away from Indiana Jones. Wait, that did happen, with about the same results. Bruckheimer would try a second time to get Verbinski back on board for the fifth film, but again he viewed that as a cash grab. He likely turned down a pretty hefty paycheck. One can certainly admire his artistic integrity. Unfortunately, we're not in this for integrity appraisal, okay? We're in the business of franchise murdering. And friends, business is booming. The loss of Gore Verbinski as a captain of this ship may very well have run it aground, but we are looking for who actually sank it. And for that, we need to look at his replacements, bringing us to suspect number 2, Rob Marshall.
How you feeling?
Very frightened.
Are you sorry? Are you kidding?
Rob Marshall was given the thankless task of taking over the series, delivering what a lot of fans of the series would call Pirates of the Caribbean DLC, which honestly is more accurate than anything I could actually come up with. That's pretty spot on. Admittedly, Marshall did start off his career hot with his Best Picture winning musical, Chicago. But then he fell off quickly with Memoirs of a Geisha, and then got shanghaied into directing Pirates 4. And now he's ended his most promising career with a Little Mermaid reboot. How the Mighty Have Fallen.
How did it come to this?
And right from the jump, you could tell that Marshall's heart just was not in this. On Stranger Tides, despite the title, is a completely dry movie.
Ironic.
It lacks any outstanding action set pieces outside maybe the mermaid fight. And hey, now that I think about it, maybe that's how he got the Little Mermaid gig, okay? Maybe he's just like really into mermaids. Maybe Disney looked at that sequence and went, this is our guy. This guy knows mermaids. There are no big ship battles, and most of the action involves people using ropes to just swing around with complete lack of imagination. Even the climax of the film, with the fight over the Fountain of Youth, is devoid of any big memorable action moments, and it ends on just a really telegraphed trick by Jack. The film even tries to give us a discount Will and Elizabeth, and it's still in my headcanon that the mermaid was trying to kill the priest at the very end and just drown and eat him. Prove me wrong. Worse yet, after the first 3 films, the movie felt incredibly low stakes, lazy, That's the one word that describes all of On Stranger Tides. In fact, after seeing this the first time in theaters, I remembered practically none of it. And for good reason. A lot of it is people just mindlessly bumbling through the jungle for endless stretches. I kid you not. Here, I'll put it on the screen for you. This is how long they just walk through jungles and nothing else. It feels like nothing is going on because nothing is going on. The weird thing about all this is, at the time this was made, this movie's budget ballooned to become the most expensive film of all time. How, I ask you? How? It was made for $379 million in 2011, and that's not even counting marketing. Some sources actually cited the final production amount to be closer to $410 million. Where did this money go, all right? I need to know. Where did it go? Actors? Yeah, sure, Depp is expensive, but the rest are mostly newcomers. Hell, you wrote out almost the entire old cast, including the Black Pearl, which is an inanimate object.
You're an inanimate object!
This whole film feels like the meme of the dude prodding just something with a stick saying, hey, something happened. And yes, that runaway budget is partially due to paying $55 million for Depp. But also, there was the costly choice to ride the 3D craze of the 2010s, with them choosing to use 3D cameras developed for Avatar. You can really tell too, because the movie spends a lot of time just, reaching out hands or throwing objects right at your face. They added even more expenses by shooting on location in Hawaii and using real ships, some constructed from scratch. This runaway budget wasn't some big mistake either. According to financial statements, Disney would claim at the period end, the estimated cost of the film was in line with its budgeted costs, and the film continued to be funded by the financiers. In shortened terms, that just means it cost this much and it was on budget. They intended to spend this amount of money. The green light of such a big, massive budget set the film up for a disappointing return. Now, don't get me wrong, it would make over $1 billion at the box office, but at World's End also nearly made $1 billion. Without the inflated price of 3D ticket sales, and for a significantly smaller budget of $290 million. Most of all, you can actually see that money on screen. On Stranger Tides set the stage for runaway budgets, and this would be continued with the sequel and make future films look like increasingly risky ventures. This is a movie that didn't just fail to properly budget, but it also just completely failed to imitate Verbinski's style. In fact, I'm not sure it even tried. And yeah, maybe one of the reasons it felt disconnected was because it didn't have a clean, easy to relatable protagonist. Or, fun action set pieces, or, just entertainment in general. But another reason it didn't feel like a Pirates film is because it just wasn't. Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio wrote the original trilogy and they returned for this one. However, it was based off a book completely unrelated to the franchise called, you guessed it, On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers. It's a very loose adaptation. It swaps out characters in the novel for franchise mainstays like Barbossa and Jack Sparrow. Instead of just writing an original script, the film needlessly injected outside DNA that didn't completely fit the tone of the franchise. This may be one of the reasons why it feels a lot more subdued. And in my personal opinion, this is probably the worst movie in the entire series. It's boring, unimaginative, and has no sense for what made the original trilogy so popular. Its biggest sin may still be in misunderstanding the appeal of the franchise in making Jack the main character. It's a misconception that directors and producers are still wrestling with. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure I can say that Rob Marshall's On Stranger Tides really sank it all. After all, there was a sequel. 6 years later, maybe quite a bit of a gap, but they still got another one out, so it's not really a killer now, is it? Which takes us to suspect number 3.
Dead men tell no tales. Would you say that to him? Please.
And here's where everything really starts to fall apart in a big way. After Verbinski refused a second time to return, the 5th film was handed off to Joachim Roning and Espen Sandberg. I'm pretty sure I got their names right. I hope so. I had to look a lot to find pronunciation, so I hope I got it right. Oh, the directors of such classics as Maleficent 2 and Tron Ares. Now there's a resume that speaks for itself. Actually, Roning, he actually did direct Young Woman of the Sea, which actually was a good one. I enjoyed that. I'd like to see more movies like that from him rather than just hired gun stuff. Because these two are what I would call hired guns, especially in this case. No individual style, no real big critical hits, and most of their financial hits are writing off pre-established intellectual properties. Why people keep giving them hundreds of millions of dollars? Who knows, okay? Especially given that his better stuff seems to be when he takes on smaller, more indie films. Who knows why these things happen? That's Hollywood, baby. Dead Man Tells No Tales is at least memorable. It actually has, some adventure, action, and creativity in it. You've got to fight with skeleton sharks and sword fights while jumping between cannons. That seems very on point for the franchise. What it doesn't have, though, is any sort of world building. Even if you dislike parts of the original trilogy, especially in the later two films, the mythology there is still well defined and consistent. The sea myths are laid out for the audience, and then the rest of the movie follows pre-established rules. A good example of this is how the dead man's chest actually works from film to film. We know there is a chest with the power to kill Davy Jones. What's in it? Well, we learn it's his heart. Why is his heart in it? Because he literally gave it to a goddess who he was in love with, and in turn is made to ferry dead souls to the afterlife. So why did he become a corrupted squid face? Because he stopped doing his job because he felt scorned by his lover. In the end, though, the whole point is the person who finds and holds the chest gains power over Jones and can either control or kill him. As we learn more and more, everything kinda logically builds into itself. And this is the same case for the cursed Aztec treasure in the first film. And I'll even give it to On Stranger Tides. It may be boring, but at least the fantasy elements had consistent rules. Even if we never actually learn how Blackbeard got his magic sword, or why he's somehow able to trap ships in bottles. Okay, that's just missing information. The fifth film is just a pile of sloppy fantasy elements that becomes pure chaos. Things just happen because they need to happen. People will just have information and it's confusing how they know it. Barbossa only becomes engaged in this story thanks to a witch who happens to have Jack's compass. Why? How did she get it?
How did you get this?
A good question. For another time.
Magic will happen because it's just magic. Why can the ghost ship come alive and eat other ships? Well, because it sunk in a magic cove or something. Why the magic cove gives it this power? I don't know. It doesn't explain it. How did Barbossa's daughter find Will's son? And how did she know he knew anything about the trident? You got me. Because I don't know how Will's son knows about the trident when the daughter only knew about it from this book that she received, and he never had that book. Which book did he read about it in? How did Barbossa know how to free the pearl from the bottle? If he knew how to do that, why didn't he find Jack earlier and get his ship back? Why is William Turner cursed when he isn't supposed to get cursed so long as he keeps ferrying souls to the dead? Did he just stop ferrying the souls? Why? Why would you do that? Do your damn job, Will.
You should do your job. That's what I'm trying to say. You should do your job. Because it's your job. Because you're the person standing there doing that thing. So just do it.
Why does giving away the compass in this movie betray the compass when Jack gives it away multiple times in previous movies? Speaking of which, in the original trilogy, it said the Sea Witch gave Jack the compass.
The compass you barter from me. It cannot lead you to this.
But here, he inherits it from his dead captain. And lastly, and probably most importantly, why is Jack Sparrow now a drunk idiot? I could keep going forever. The answer is always the same. It's magic. It's all just magic, so don't even think about it. However, any good seasoned fantasy reader knows fantasy is built on world building. We talk about this in length in my Amazon Sucks at Fantasy series, okay? I have like 3 full videos about it. That's just a friendly reminder to subscribe before we cover Wheel of Time Season 2. I am getting to it, people. I promise. It's coming. Within this 5th film, things are just happening without rhyme or reason. Just like Rings of Power, people will bump into each other in the middle of an ocean out of just pure coincidence. This has all the hallmarks of a sloppy screenplay. The reason for this is because it's the first time screenwriters Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio did not return. They actually wrote an earlier draft to the movie, but it was thrown out by Depp, reportedly because it featured a female antagonist. And there's a couple explanations for why he didn't want that. Some claim it's because his last movie had a female villain, and he was worried that it would get repetitive. While other conspiracies have it all tied to the drama going on in his personal life. Regardless of the reason, their script basically never came to pass. The new screenplay was typed out by someone by the name of Jeffrey Nathanson, who does have actually a solid resume. He had Catch Me If You Can under his belt, but, these days, he's mostly known for such gems as The Lion King. No, not the original, the remake, which must have been the easiest paycheck ever because that film is literally a shot-for-shot remake of an animated movie written by somebody else. Yeah. Can someone pay me to do that? Sign me up. How do I get to do that? Looking in depth at his resume, He's never really written fantasy, and it really shows. Magic in his movie is more a means of writing people out of corners. It has a lot of Marvel-esque one-liners.
That was not part of the plan.
And none of the rich historical tinged dialogue of the other entries.
Well, you may tell the captain that I am disinclined to acquiesce to his request.
He said you'd say that.
The plot again is revolving around a generic just find the magic object fetch quest. I mean, Stranger Tides just did that. And both these movies don't do it nearly as well as Dead Man's Chest.
I got a jar of dirt, I got a jar of dirt, and guess what's inside it?
This one involves finding a trident that can apparently break any curse. But if Barbossa knew about this trident to the extent he had a book or wrote a book on how to find it, and then he left it with his daughter, why didn't he try and find this trident to break his own curse in the Black Pearl? Now, I don't know. Did he know about it yet? Maybe he didn't know about it yet. This all leads to a completely asinine in-credit scene teasing Davy Jones' return, which even if he did survive, somehow, it doesn't make any sense because he should look human now, right? He was cursed because he wasn't doing his job of ferrying the souls. And we just established the trident, it broke all curses, so he shouldn't look like a squid man or a crab hand. He should look like a human being, because the curse is broken. I mean, Will at the end looks normal again. Why wouldn't Davy Jones? Riddle me that. Also, how do you survive getting his heart stepped? I don't know. None of it makes sense. Don't worry about it. This tease will never be paid off, so I'm not all that concerned. This whole script is just stupid. I was very tempted to make him a suspect. In fact, I'm gonna say screw it. If he gets to do whatever he wants, so do I. I'm scratching out the director's name and I'm putting in his name instead. The failure of this film is far more due to egregiously bad fantasy writing than it is mediocre directing. The most damnable mark against this thing is that it's one of the lowest grossing films in the entire franchise. In fact, it's the lowest outside the first film. Yet like the fourth film, it suffered a runaway budget that ballooned up to $350 million without marketing, which makes the profitability of the final $750 million gross a little questionable. And the marketing team, they really did try their best. They tried to generate more interest by basically lying to the audience and trying to get them to think that Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom were returning is a big con. I mean, they did return, but only for a grand total for about 3 minutes combined. The second mark against this movie is it is the last Pirates film, which may make it the de facto killer. You're in dangerous waters here, Jeff. Didn't think you were going to be a suspect, but you are. You're on our board. Outside the writing, though, there's more to Dead Man Tells No Tales than just its long, cumbersome title and nonsense script. This film may be the one to expose the real villain here. Yes, I'm talking about suspect number 4, Johnny Depp, or Jack Sparrow. And here is where things start to get messy. It's just the tip of the iceberg. Make no mistake, Johnny Depp is probably the reason the franchise got as big as it did. Jack Sparrow is one hell of a character, and that is largely thanks to Johnny Depp's confidence in his own performance, especially in the face of all the people who doubted him. On paper, it's an oddball mix of Keith Richards, Bugs Bunny, and a dash of Zorro, all right? A weird combination. From the scene where he first arrives on shore to the very ending of the first film, I have never seen a movie so flawlessly bring a pop culture staple to the screen. The opening tells you everything you need to know about this character's unearned confidence, then moves into a scene where he sells his mad genius. He is not some clueless buffoon, but rather a madman with a plan, who's constantly underestimated due to his drunken swagger. His real talent seems to be in his ability to read people and really kind of guess their desires, to the extent he can often predict what they're going to do before they maybe have even thought of it. This was the secret to Jack Sparrow. Not a clueless idiot that gets lucky, though make no mistakes, he does get very, very lucky. But rather, he's someone whose fox-like wit is masked by madness.
You're mad.
Thank goodness for that, because if I wasn't, this would probably never work.
Like I said, originally when producers saw this performance in the dailies, it sent them into complete panic mode. They thought it was over the top, cartoonish, and nothing like the devilish rogue that they had imagined. It's to the credit of both Depp and Verbinski that they stood their ground, confident in how it would all edit together. The results turned the first film into a blockbuster, and even earned Depp an Oscar nomination. Which, in my opinion, I still think he probably should have won. I'd say he's one of the biggest pop culture mainstays of the last 20 years. A lot of people's relevancy fades pretty quick, But I could talk to a Zoomer or Gen Alpha, and they would instantly know this character just off a description, or just by saying the quote,
Where's the rum gone?
In a way, it's easy to understand how Jack Sparrow became the franchise, despite Verbinski's best efforts. It's now hard to imagine a Pirates of the Caribbean film without Jack Sparrow to anchor it. Depp came to love the character so much, he used to claim he carried the costume in his car just so he could stop by hospitals and dress up to visit children. Now, how much of that is personal PR and how much of it is truth? Who knows? You tell me. It's all going to depend on, your personal judgment of the man's character. But the success of Jack Sparrow may have also spelled the franchise's downfall. First in the pivot to make him the main character, when Jack Sparrow was usually at his best as a supporting character who injects a certain uncertainty into all the scenes. It's usually hard to know what he's going to do. It's part of the fun of him. We don't know if he's going to do the right thing or succumb to his own selfishness. On Stranger Tides was the first film to really put this character front and center. Despite that though, it still did a good job of making him consistent and making Jack Sparrow feel like the old Jack we knew and loved. A genius wrapped in a drunk madman who has his moments of rogue charm. Dead Man Tells No Tales may have known he was better as, a middleman, so it tried to introduce new protagonists in the form of the children of pre-established characters. But they were underwritten and felt like complete strangers. When they locked lips at the end, I really was reminded of the how it should have ended quote.
Oh, that's not love, my dear. You barely knew him for like 2 days.
It was real!
So with such underwritten characters, Jack again serves as the main grounding element. He still feels like he kind of takes over the movie. But if making Jack Sparrow the main character is a flaw, then turning him into a complete buffoon is really fatal.
Are all pirates this stupid?
In Dead Man Tells No Tales, Jack Sparrow is no longer this mad genius. He's instead this sad drunkard who just gets endlessly lucky. And that's considerably less interesting. It's easy to pin this on the directors and screenwriters, but Depp, he shared much of the blame. He had played this character for over 4 films. And he should have known this was being taken in the wrong direction. Hell, he even turned down the original screenplay. I don't know if that would have been any better, but it was at least written by Elliott and Rossio, who understood the character through and through. With all that experience, Depp really should have known he was playing this low energy. He was playing every line far too slurred, although that may not have been acting, to be fair.
Well, it's your lucky day. Have either of the 4 of you seen my bank?
He should have really been able to tell that he was playing him too much of an over-the-top idiot. But he didn't stop any of this. He played it as written and seemed to just phone it in. And there may have been something else going on that made this version of Jack feel so off. Reports started to flood in that maybe the reason Jack Sparrow seemed far too drunk in this film is because Depp actually was showing up to set drunk and waking up late with hangovers.
You're drunk and you're sleeping.
My point exactly.
Personal assistants were posted outside his trailers just to wait for his lights to turn on in the middle of the day, so they could then run and tell the directors, who would then prepare for him. I think they used the phrase, "the eagle has landed," or something like that. As a result, the film crews struggled to make their days, and maybe why they didn't go for another take or two, when they really should have.
Someone explain to me as to why I'm here.
At times, Depp's agent and Bruckheimer would be at each other's necks and blaming one another for his behavior. It basically turned into fear and loathing in the Caribbean. The real reason for Depp's actions would not come to light until around 2021, when his entire career and love life would be put under the microscope as a larger part of an industry-wide movement. Yes, we're talking about the dreaded suspect number 5, Amber Heard.
We say oh ho, but we don't say ho, 'cause ho is disrespectful, yo.
This one's hard to get into because we are working with only what we know as outsiders looking in. A marital spat that exploded into the public sphere thanks to the Me Too movement. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the individual claims because I don't want to indulge in all the big, juicy tabloid titles. And I'd like to keep this video nicely monetized. But I will give you the speed version and how it relates to the fate of the franchise. You've all heard of Harvey, right?
Harvey, can he be trusted?
No, you can't trust him. He went to jail, and he's a very bad man. The result of his arrest created the conditions for a hot kettle in Hollywood. It had been heating up for years, and the lid was ready to pop. And explode it did, with the Me Too movement in 2017. Believe all women is a nice sentiment, and it does make for a pretty good movement tagline, but it does create the conditions of a guilty until proven innocent. Among those targeted was the case of Johnny Depp and his soon-to-be ex-wife Amber Heard. Heard accused Depp of domestic abuse in the Washington Post, and Depp in turn accused Heard of slander, libel, defamation, and everything in between. He would lose his first case in the UK, which only added kindling to this bonfire. All of this snowballed to Depp being fired off the Harry Potter franchise, where at the time he was playing the role of Grindelwald. He ended up suing Heard in the States in one of the most lengthy and publicized cases of the year. Stories about wine bottles being thrown at heads. You had leaked audio of Heard verbally berating Depp.
I did not fucking deck you. I fucking was hitting you. That's the difference between me and you. You're a fucking baby. I'm such a baby. Grow the fuck up.
And reports of defecation on beds. Disney is a family-friendly brand, and this was all starting to feel a little not friendly. They cut ties with Depp. Though they didn't officially fire him, they decided to play it safe and really held him at arm's length. They ceased any kind of pre-production on a sixth pirate film and were beginning talks of a complete reboot. All of this just served to burn the relationship between Depp and Disney. By the end of the trial, Heard was found to have defamed Depp and was forced to pay $10 million in compensation, then an additional $5 million in punitive damages. However, she did not walk away empty-handed. She did win one of her countersuits for $2 million. Still, not great. Today, you'll get a lot of different narratives online and in the media. There are still many who believe Depp was in the wrong, and others that think Amber Heard basically Gone Girl'd him. Gone Girl, by the way, is a reference to David Fincher's movie. Each side is using various legal victories to make their case. Some are simply fans of Depp and want to believe the best of the actor, while others are defending Heard as part of the wider Me Too movement. Neither are probably making the most honest takes. And what's the truth of all of it? Well, hell if I know. To me, everything here that we've heard about points to a mutually abusive relationship that just needed to end and should have never been made public. There was no reason to turn it into a complete media circus. It could have stayed quiet between the two of them. They could have handled it like normal adults by lawyering up and arguing behind closed doors who gets the car and who gets the house, all right? That's how civilized society is supposed to do it. The issue here is that it was Heard that sought to capitalize on the movement and try to make a case first on TikTok in the court of public opinion. She's the one that decided to air those grievances. Her goal was to hurt Depp's career as much as she could, and she basically did get what she wanted. Depp still hasn't fully recovered from this, and who knows if he ever will. Whether it be Disney still not feeling comfortable working with him, or Depp feeling burned by Disney. The point is, the bridge between them was cut, which left the pirate franchise in a complete state of limbo. And this all left our favorite blockbuster producer between a rock and a hard place. Where does he go from here? Do you bring back Depp? Would he even come back? Do you just reboot completely? Which path is the path of least resistance? Suspect number 6, Jerry Bruckheimer.
You can't say yes to it because it doesn't f***ing exist!
Well, let's get Bruckheimer on the horn then.
No, Nick!
If you don't know him by name, you may know him by that classic logo of a lightning striking the tree. Jerry Bruckheimer is a talented producer specializing in raising a lot of money or putting up a lot of his own money in order to produce big screen, big budgeted gambles. He deserves a lot of credit for chasing the original pitch on Pirates of the Caribbean and for hiring Gore Verbinski and trusting his vision. But he also deserves a lot of the blame for what came after. For one, Bruckheimer was certainly playing a lot of cover for what was going on during the filming of Pirates 5. Depp sustained a hand injury that was later revealed to have been caused by a dispute with his wife. Bruckheimer covered it up by saying he slammed it in a car door or something. He also waved off claims about Depp's intoxicated behavior on set, despite the fact he was actively having arguments with Depp's agent over it, all behind closed doors. There's trouble in paradise. Ever since Depp and Disney have had their little divide, he has been trying to puzzle out what he can even do with this franchise. And his mismanagement of the Pirates brand actually began long before the Depp-Heard debacle even started. No, his real problem began as soon as Verbinski decided to walk out the door. It was Bruckheimer that decided the best course was to option the rights to the book on Stranger Tides, a book that really had little, if anything, to do with the actual series, and led to a movie that felt effortless, directionless, and lacking any sense of adventurous fun. He was also the main money man, so he owns most of the blame for the budgets of the latter two movies just spiraling out of control, putting Disney in the spot where they're on the line for near $1 billion at the box office just to break even. Most of all though, once Verbinski left, Bruckheimer was forced to step up and really kind of take over as the new leader, determining the path and future of the franchise because there was nobody else doing that job. He was the one who wanted to make the series more focused on Jack Sparrow, really turn him into the main character. He was the one who hired the creative talent, picking directors and screenwriters with maybe less impressive resumes than those that helmed the previous entries. That is not to say you shouldn't give new talent a shot, but maybe you don't try that with $400 million on the line. Bruckheimer had a lot of paths he considered. He at one point was considering Karen Gillan of Doctor Who and Guardians of the Galaxy fame to be the new lead, basically the start of a new trilogy with Depp again in a supporting role. There were circulating rumors that Gillan would play the character of Red from the rides, a rum smuggler who would have crossed paths with Sparrow. Now, I actually think this one sounded the most promising, and I kind of wish they had gone with this one. At least you're tying things back into the ride, you're bringing in a good actor, and you could have made something different with it, while still having ties to the original series. This sounded the most promising. But then, after Depp heard Scandal, he tried to pivot again and reboot the entire series with Margot Robbie as the new lead. Now, I'm not sure what he was thinking here. Maybe it's because she played a wannabe Jack Sparrow in Birds of Prey, okay? They do seem to have a lot in common as characters, especially in that film. Unfortunately, that idea stalled out, leading to a lot of frustration from Robbie. Now, this reboot idea isn't officially dead, but it is trapped in development hell. They've also recently toyed with the idea of Pirates of the Caribbean 6 and trying to figure out if they can bring back Depp. And who knows if Depp would even be willing to return at this point. I don't know, maybe he'll get desperate enough and take a fat paycheck. Money, I find, can make people put aside a lot of differences. Make no mistake, I could completely see this series rising from the depths like the Black Pearl. Just remember the wise words of Luke Skywalker.
No one's ever really gone.
Any franchise can make a comeback. The question is, what kind of a comeback? Will it return to its former glory or just be a shadow of itself? And that is what brings us to our conclusion.
You know, the problem with being the last of anything, by and by there'll be none left at all. There's never a guarantee of coming back.
Let's wrap this case up. So we have our 6 suspects. Gore Verbinski, who created the franchise, and then walked away, leaving it in limbo. We have Rob Marshall, who had already burned out a long time ago and failed to understand what made the franchise work. We have Jeff Nathanson, who did not understand why certain characters worked well and how to write good fantasy world building, or even how to color within the lines of basic continuity. Then we had Johnny Depp, a victim of the character's success, who allowed the character to become a parody of itself and overwhelm the entire franchise. Then we had Amber Heard, who made a marital spat very public and caused a rift between Depp and Disney. And lastly, we had Jerry Bruckheimer, who had no idea what to do with the franchise after Depp's trial, and now has allowed it to stagnate. Those of you who have watched past videos are probably expecting some big twist, a surprise gotcha suspect, or linking all the suspects together in a double murder. You know, the honest fact of the matter is, sometimes when Scooby rips the mask off the suspect, it's just Old Man Jenkins, the person you suspected from the very beginning. Let's go back to our analogy of our ghost ship. This is actually a real occurrence that spooked sailors and spawned ghost stories. They would find ships drifting or afloat that would not respond to any signals, and when they came aboard, there was no one there. Not the bodies of the dead, just no one. Empty. And that's exactly what the pirate franchise is right now. It is a ghost ship, an empty set of sails, top deck, and hollow cabins. There is no one home. The question is not who sank this ship after they found it empty. The question is who abandoned it in the first place. Because after all, the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise is not fully sunk yet. It's just aimlessly floating around. Which brings us back to our very first, and I'd say most obvious suspect. I can hardly talk about anyone in this video without mentioning Gore Verbinski. He was both the creator and the destroyer. When he chose to walk away from the franchise at the conclusion of At World's End, he did something I could actually really respect. He said, "I have told my story. I stand by my story, and I am done." Too many other artists have been unable to do that. They would have compromised their original vision for that paycheck. And who knows, maybe someday he too will become desperate enough that he will then hoist those colors once more. In leaving, he abandoned Pirates of the Caribbean to people with zero understanding why it worked in the first place. It wasn't just about Jack Sparrow. It wasn't just about magical mayhem and sword fights. It wasn't about a bunch of ships shooting cannons at each other. It wasn't just girls in tight corsets and one-liners. It was all the work of a man with a grasp on his craft and his world. More than anything, he's again a director that understood the importance of world building in fantasy and how it needs to mix with reality. He's a director who understood the motivations of his characters is what drove the conflict. He knew how to create unique scenarios to put stress on those character relationships and intensify conflict. These were the actual core ingredients that got the recipe right. It kept things in ship shape. Verbinski was no hired gun, and I think it's a mistake to think anyone could take over the steering wheel. Much how James Mangold learned how hard it was to duplicate Steven Spielberg in his prime, so too are these directors struggling to duplicate an actual auteur. There have been many Tarantino copycats over the year, many Coen brother copycats. You can always tell the fakes from the real McCoy. I think maybe we just haven't been giving Verbinski the credit he deserves. And that's all I got for you on this one. Do you think the loss of its core artistic vision is the real death of Pirates of the Caribbean? Do you think it was the Amber Heard trial? I can hear a good argument for that. Let me know who you think is the real killer in the comments down below. I'm wishing you guys all a Merry Christmas and hoping you all have a great holiday season. Keep those reels turning. Thank you.